Hello, and welcome to episode 8 of How Do I Lead Now? In this episode, we're going to focus on why it's so important to appreciate how other people see the world. I'd like you to think for a moment about how you approach disconnects with other people. It's common when we're talking with someone and that other person's worldview is quite different than ours, so they're expressing an opinion maybe that's different than our own, that we might focus on where that difference is and take the opportunity to explain to the other person why we think their perspective is wrong and ours is right. And when we're talking about something that's really important to us, it's also common to have a strong overlay of emotion that goes with that explanation. And even though our intention is perhaps to change the other person's perspective, that's rarely what happens. I mean, if we think about it, typically when we approach disconnects or differences of opinion in this way, rather than building common ground, the more common outcome is actually to create even a bigger divide. And that's because when people don't feel like their perspective is appreciated or understood, they're far more likely to entrench in what they believe than open to explore something different. Given the times we find ourselves in and all of these very strongly emotionally laden conversations that we need to have in order to be able to make meaningful action or take meaningful action in topics and subjects in areas that are so important to us, we've got to get better at being able to have these kinds of conversations. And so I'd like to share just a couple of things to keep in mind when you find yourself in a conversation with someone who sees the world differently than you do. The first is that whatever people believe is true is a reflection of their worldview, which means it is a reflection of all the experiences that they have had in a lifetime. Where they grew up, what they've read, how they've been treated. All of these things come together to create what I'll call our worldview, which is our assumptions or beliefs about how the world works. And in order to invite someone to expand that worldview and maybe consider something different, the first thing we've got to do is get curious about how they have arrived at the worldview that they currently have. And so in a practical sense, in a conversation, that would look like asking people questions that invite them to explain how they arrived at the perspective that they have. It could be as simple as saying, tell me a little bit more about that. That's a different perspective than I'm used to. I'd love to know more about what shaped that idea for you. You might even ask specifically, are there experiences that you have had that have reinforced this belief for you? Again, always come from a place of genuine curiosity and be open to learn from that exchange. And often I think what you'll find is that when you approach a conversation with that perspective, that the other person is more likely to return the favor and become curious about your perspective. And in this way, we can find and create common ground. And I would not expect the outcome of that exchange to be a sudden, epiphany that changes the other person's perspective quite a bit. But if what it does is begin to open them to a different line of thinking, that's really, really valuable. And through a continuous exchange of ideas, I think we can begin to get more of a groundswell towards some common thinking and hopefully the support that we need to try some new ways of doing things. And who knows, maybe in the exchange of ideas, we come up with a third perspective that is even more valuable than the different unique ones. So I think that's our goal these days, is actually to be learning with and from each other to expand our thinking so that we can see and explore new possibilities. So how can you do this in a practical way? I would suggest a number of different things. One is just even being open to exploring the resources that other people are using to shape their perspective. I know I was in an online conversation over the weekend where people with really different perspectives were actually saying, here's some of the videos that have shaped my perspectives, or here's the people that I'm listening to. And I went out and listened to some of those videos and looked up some of those resources, and I learned a lot. So being open to explore how other people's views are being shaped, and at least tuning into those channels and giving them consideration, I think is a great place to begin. Another fantastic practice is actually just learning more about other people. I can tell you, when I did my MBA a number of years ago, I had the practice of every Thursday of inviting a different person to have lunch with me. I didn't even buy them lunch because I was broke. I just said, hey, would you like to have lunch with me? Because I was curious about them and wanted to learn more about who they were. Maybe because their ideas were quite different than mine. Or maybe because I admired how they put some thoughts and ideas out into the world and was curious just about who they were. And over lunch, we would just chat, and I would ask people a little bit about themselves, where they came from, what they aspired to, what brought them to the program, what interested them. And often they would invite me to do the same. And to be honest, that was it. The agenda was no more than getting to know each other a little bit. I'll tell you, I benefited greatly from those conversations. I both got a summer job, and my permanent job came from people that I had lunch with that referred me into opportunities. So you never know where creating these connections, how that might benefit either of you. But it's a fantastic practice, if nothing else, to learn to appreciate how other people see the world, which will expand your own worldview and make you even more valuable in these complex conversations we're having, where we're trying to find meaningful intersection points that are going to lead to some new ways of thinking and hopefully new ways of being. So your reflection for this week is to consider, what do you do to appreciate how other people see the world? And if you don't have some practices that are expanding your worldview, well, I can't think of a better time to begin to create some than now. So reflect upon what you could do to expand your appreciation of other people's worldviews. And I know we're living in a COVID-19 world, so lunch is not a possibility, but I'll tell you, I've continued to meet people online and extended invitations to people that I'm curious about to just get on a Zoom call with me. And I've explored a little bit about who they are and what's important to them, and that has helped me continue to expand my worldview about what's possible. So I hope you'll find a practice that works for you. I think this is really, really essential right now, that we all are finding ways to expand our appreciation of other people's perspectives so that we can find connection points that are meaningful. As always, would love to hear from you, what your experiences are, how this maybe shapes your worldview in a meaningful way. Send your insights and observations, and I hope you'll join me next week, where I'm going to be talking a bit about what you can say, or how to think about what to say when you don't know what to say. So it should be a fun topic. I hope you'll join. And until then, I hope you have a fantastic week, and I will look forward to connecting with you next week.